welcome back, everybody, to the TL2D podcast. And we have Adriana with us again and Jessica, who are both from the TL2D team. And we have a new team member with us today, Desiree. And maybe Desiree, talk a little bit about how you contribute to the team.
Awesome. Hi, I'm Desiree. I'm the videographer and video editor sometimes at TL2D. So at TL2D, I contribute to the team by coming up with like video ideas, cutting down existing videos, and like our lovely podcast which you're listening to for TikTok and like our other social medias, and overall just contributing in small ways like to different aspects of the team.
Okay, she's being very modest there, and they're not small ways at all. And we've done some great videos this year. But thank you, Desiree. Today, we're talking about how to deal with emergencies, and they can happen in any way. And I'll start by talking about something I didn't view as an emergency at all. And it was many years ago. And I think some people get that mechanics gene where they're very aware of how their car works. And
I didn't get that gene.
No. And
it's a generation.
People don't.
Yeah.
And so there's stuff that we have to learn. And I was stopped at a Canadian Tire store, actually, and a man who clearly did have the gene pointed out to me there was a puddle under my car. And I was accustomed to, sometimes in the summer, you get kind of exhaust or evaporation or whatever it is from the air conditioning. And so I thought, oh, puddle of water. I didn't think it was a big deal at all. So I started driving, and then I thought, well, the guy pointed it out, so it must be kind of unusual. And fortunately for me, I headed toward the dealership. And my car died in the intersection it completely dead at the intersection right in front of the dealership. I was very lucky. So
good place for it to die.
Yeah, the dealership came
that's
out
lucky.
and pushed the car in. Oh, it was just dead. Like, that's it, right? It turned out that the puddle underneath my car was coolant. And like coolant, I thought coolant was, something to do with keeping the car cool. Well, no, it keeps the engine cool. And that's kind of a big deal. So this puddle under my car, if I'd driven any further, which I couldn't in this particular case, I would have burned out my engine, and it would have been like thousands of dollars to get the car repaired. So knowing what the puddle is under your car, or checking under your car before you get in it to see if there are any puddles, is a really big deal. And it could be anything. And I made a note of some of the things, now, the different fluids that could be under the car. Now, I tried to look up colors so you would know brake fluid is always kind of a lime green. But that's not true, because some manufacturers have different colored brake fluids. So you can't necessarily identify by the color, but they're bright colors. They wouldn't be, if you looked at them, you wouldn't think they were water. Okay, you couldn't confuse them with water. But you have brake fluid, transmission fluid, coolant, which is my mistake, power steering fluid. And for a manual car, there's also a drive line fluid. And then, of course, you could also be leaking gasoline or oil or something like that. So checking, and which brings us to, really, every time you get in the car, you should circle check it. And when you circle check it, you look for things like puddles of fluid. You make sure there's nobody behind the vehicle. You're looking for any cracks that are new in the windshield, the mirrors, anything like that. You're looking for new dents on your car. And it sounds like a whole lot. This is like a 2-minute thing just before you get in the vehicle. And it also makes sure that there's nobody low or nothing behind the car that you could go over and wreck your tires. And while you're doing that, you're also checking the lights to make sure they're not broken, and that the tires are okay, that you haven't picked up a nail or something else. So other things that you should check perhaps have to do with things like your battery. And batteries don't last forever. The life of a battery really is around 3 years. And especially in a cold climate. Before winter, you should always have your battery checked, because one of the worst things I think would be to get caught somewhere with a battery that won't start. And now you're in a freezing car, waiting for somebody to come and give you a hand. But recently there was a battery issue, and as Desiree was talking about, we do some filming. We were doing some filming, and then this situation happened. So who's going to tell that story?
Yeah, I'm glad you said 3 years for a battery because ours was 9 years old.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
You're kidding.
I'm not kidding. It was
Wow.
9 years old. I actually found out after that my dad was just charging it after each drive. He was like, I think it's time to get a new one. I was like, well, how old is it? He's like, 9. I was like, 9 years old?
9 years old, and they're not that expensive. I mean,
Oh
we're
my
not talking
goodness.
about a new engine, right?
No, I was like,
no
are they
kidding,
like,
this happened.
yeah, I was like, you let me drive that, Dad. So yeah, it was 9 years old is what I found out because I haven't driven his car in a long time. I normally need my sister share a car, but she took it. So I was using his car and we went to Wendy's, I think it was, the three of us after filming just to grab some food. And I was trying to start the car and it was making like a weird noise. Like I was like, I haven't heard this noise. Sometimes I've had trouble where I put the key in and it won't turn and like the steering wheel's locked and then I freak out. That's happened. I was stuck in the middle of the road once. The first time I ever drove, I pulled out and I was like, I'm a big girl, I can drive. And then it stuck. Like the steering wheel wouldn't move. And I was like, what did I do? And I'm like stuck in the middle of the road and like cars are piling up. My parents like waving to me and I'm like, come help. So I didn't turn
Oh
the
my
steering
God.
wheel enough, or like I left it in neutral. Like everyone was coming out to help me. I was so embarrassed. So I thought it was one of those moments where I was like, this is me just not turning the steering wheel. But no, it was a weird noise. And then I remember you guys were about to leave, and I was like, maybe just don't leave yet. Just like, can you just wait till I start my car for a quick second? It's just not working. And the noise was really weird. So I FaceTimed my dad and I was like, is this normal? He was like, I think you need to jump start it. And I was like, like come again? I've never done that. I don't know how to do that. And I didn't even remember how to like pop the hood. Like I didn't like I used to get the levers between opening the gas and popping the hood confused. Like to this day, I'm like filling up gas. Like I forget that you're supposed to turn off the engine. Like I'm like, it's like a your face, Jessica.
Adriana. Oh my goodness.
I've had my license for 3 years. Yeah. So I remember I was driving with my friend and I was going to fill up gas and she's like, aren't you going to turn off the engine? I was like, oh, you're supposed to do that. Yes. Right. So I don't know. So I'm happy you were there, Jessica and Desiree, to help me out because I don't know what would have happened. But we popped the hood eventually and I tried to find jumper cables. And luckily Jessica's more prepared than I was on this day.
Yes.
And she
Jumper
had
cables.
them.
That used to happen to me all the time where we would need to jumpstart my car in St. Catharines. And so my dad was like, you are keeping these in the car because now that you are not going to be living in the same city as me, heaven forbid something happens, you need these with you. So it's a very important thing to always make sure you have in the car.
Yeah.
And
So I'm
get a new battery when you need it, you know.
yeah, I had no idea it was so old. Number one, get a new battery. I like when you said 3 years, I was like, oh, we had it for 9.
It's kind
So,
of
yeah.
3 to 5, depending on the vehicle and the battery and all that. But I mean, at 3, you should definitely be checking it.
Yeah, I think my dad was like, yeah, they're supposed to last 5, and this one got us to 9, so that's good. And I was like, did it get us to 9 though? Did it? You have to charge it every time. So yeah, you, Jessica and Desiree were helping me out with trying to figure out how to jumpstart it. I was like, I'm an independent woman. I know how to jumpstart a car. And then I was like, I don't remember how to jumpstart a car.
Well, you know,
I don't
and
remember.
that's another point is that whenever something kind of catastrophic like that happens, I mean, I don't panic in that I go crazy, but I don't think as straight, you know, that I normally would. I'm not as logical step by step as I normally would be when you're in that kind of, oh my God, especially when cars are piling up or, you know, you're kind of in a precarious position when something doesn't work. So a little bit of forward planning is a really good idea. And so, which brings us to, I mean, that was a situation that you guys got through. And Jessica has a tip for you, which she brought up that day. You didn't know how to open the hood of the car. Jessica, where would you find that
No.
information?
Well, what I actually did was first thought, what would Anne-Marie do? Because Anne-Marie in this situation would be calm, cool, and collected and think, how do I do this? And I stood there, and everybody here can vouch for me. I said, we can check the owner's manual. we can go and do that.
Yeah.
And that's where
And
you'll find most really good information.
you will find so much handy information. And does anybody know that handy information is in there? Absolutely not. Because nobody actually reads the owner's manual until you're in a situation where you need it. And there you go, whipping it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's a really good thing. We also have a video, which we'll link to, that we did with Canadian Tire. And I've heard from people, they say, oh yeah, well, I pull out my phone and I just find a video. Well, finding a good video and kind of getting to the really helpful one without all the other stuff is not as simple as it seems. And that's a really good one that's just about how to jumpstart a battery. So that we'll link to, and people can find that. It's also on the same place they found this podcast if they were looking at it on YouTube, but that's there. So if this had happened in the winter and you were out in the middle of nowhere and you could call for help, your dad in this case, or somebody else, but maybe the car's not starting, it's starting to get really cold, you're stranded. There are some really important things that it would be really nice to have in the vehicle. And maybe Jessica, you can talk a little bit about that, some of the things
Sure.
that would be good to have in your vehicle.
Well, there are definitely a lot of things you want to ensure you have in your car emergency kit. I mean, jumper cables might be one of them.
Maybe.
But if there is nobody around you, things like windshield washer fluid, any type of traction aid, and traction aids you can get at any home department store like Canadian Tire, Home Depot, maybe even a small shovel with a handle if you're around lots of snow, a lock de-icer. You don't know you need it until you need it. And unfortunately, that was the case for me. Same thing. I was in St. Catharines and my dad's like, you are going to need this, like, just take this with you. And I didn't think I needed it until I needed it. As well as a snow brush, or what's on the back of the snow brush?
It's like the scraper for
The
the
scraper, the ice
part.
scraper, ice
The
scraper.
scraper part.
Those as well, all things that are very handy to use.
And one thing that I've read as far as a traction aid is that if you get really stuck and you don't have anything, you can use the floor mats, the rubber floor mats from your car.
Oh, I didn't know
as
that.
traction aid. Yeah, there you go.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know. And Adriana mentioned earlier when we were talking about kitty litter, some people will carry that around. I mean, I did for a little while, but I didn't have a
I just
cat
think
at
it's
the
like
time.
easy to
So-
remember. Like if you have
Yeah.
cats, like you just leave them in the car and then you're going to use it at some point.
Yeah, well, maybe.
Yeah.
I hope I
Maybe.
never have to.
Or
Yeah.
at least for the cats. You'll use it for the cats.
Yes,
you have
but
some.
the mat is already there. So
Yeah.
if you have an opportunity to use that, that's a good idea. Small
think-
first aid kit is a good idea.
in my car, I know my dad always has a first aid kit, and we're that family that somehow we're like always the only family that has it whenever we go for like outings and picnics. So if someone gets like a tiny cut, they're like, "Oh my god, who has a first aid kit?" My dad like pulls out this
Yay! Yeah.
red pouch. He's like, "What kind of band-aids do you need? We have the big ones, small ones, circle, diamonds." But in addition to that, winter, obviously cold weather, so being prepared for that, warm clothing. I think Dollarama sells them. It's like the shiny foil ones. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, the blanket.
And they take up no space. They're like those moon blankets or whatever they call them, right? And they're little
Yeah.
metallic blankets. But apparently, I mean, I've never tried them, but they apparently keep in a lot of heat.
It's great to have. Did I say blankets? I generally like in my car, we generally have blankets because we get cold very easily. So we always have blankets in our car and food. You can't go anywhere without water.
Yeah, but even, I mean, you have your snacks in the car, but then there's also like granola bars or things that have a very long shelf life, and bottled water that you don't actually need to drink while you're in the car. But in the event that you got stranded, you would have something to sustain you until somebody came to help you. And this is the other thing I wanted to tell you guys about. It's a new app and there's a website and it's called What 3 Words. So what, the number 3 words. And emergency services in part of Ontario are already using it, but it's something you can use yourself. And I think it's the coolest thing. It is, they've assigned 3 totally random words to every 4 meter square in the world. So if you are out in the middle of nowhere and you look up what that square that you're on is, it's onion, parka, green. Okay, 3 totally random words. It's 1 4-meter space in the world. And you can send that to emergency services. You can send it to your friend. There are just so many ways you could use it. You're coming out of Maple Leaf Gardens, or I don't think Maple Leaf Gardens exists anymore, but like a big stadium, right? Okay. And
Rogers
there
Center.
are 15 doors.
Yeah.
So you want to tell your friend to pick you up at the stadium, but now you have to identify the door. You send them purple habitat girl. And they put that in and they know exactly what door you're at, exactly the 4 meters you're at.
Wow.
I know.
Nobody knows
I think it's
longitude.
unbelievable. Huh?
I was saying no one knows like longitude and latitude anymore. Like
No.
nobody knows any of that.
And don't confuse me with that stuff. I would need something to read it anyway, right?
Yeah.
But these 3 words, okay, I can do this. And
it's so
it's
much easier.
exactly where you are. And I just can think of so many ways to use that. Please pick me up. And we were talking one day about young people going to a party and they get there and all of a sudden everybody's bringing out drugs or there's something there and they think, oh God, I got to get out of here. All you have to do is your parent knows beforehand, text the 3 words. They know exactly where to pick you up, even if you're out in the bush. And the other incredible thing about this is that, of course, it works on the website, but if you download the app, which is also the number 3 words, you don't need internet access to be able to pull up that spot.
That's amazing. Wow.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
I think that's like really cool, especially like if you're horrible, like if you're like me and you're horrible with directions, like having that, because trying to explain to someone where you're at sometimes it takes longer to explain where you're situated. And like if you can just type in the 3 words and they can find you immediately, that's super cool. And
Especially if you're in a collision or something.
Yeah.
Like you never know when that kind of things are going to happen. So to be able to, without internet access, tell people within a 4-meter radius?
4 meters.
That's incredible. Wow.
It is. And that's what in Ontario, there are emergency services using it. So when you call, they automatically pinpoint where you are and they send onion bottle Zoom to the fire truck and the ambulance, and everybody knows it's not, I'm at halfway between mile marker, whatever, and whatever in front of the red, it very complicated, especially in rural areas, to explain where you are. And this pinpoints where you are. I think it's just brilliant.
Even when we were meeting for filming, like I know we all went to like different areas, even though we said we were meeting like at certain locations, we could have like used it then to just be like, cool, we're gonna meet at like, goat, herd, parka or whatever.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, we need to start using this. So back to our list of emergency things, I'm just kind of a small toolkit is a really good idea. I have one of those devices. It's very small and fits in the glove box, but it has like the 3 basic screwdrivers and I don't know, a whole bunch.
Like a multi-tool.
Yeah,
like a multi-tool.
Yeah. And it just stays in the glove box. Hopefully I'll never need it. And we were looking at the CAA list and they suggest fuses, that everybody should have spare fuses. Well, I got to say, I wouldn't know where to put a fuse. And I can't see anybody actually going that far. A gas can like those, oh my God, during 2020, when people were not driving very much and the price of gas was going up, there were things on the internet with people with plastic bags trying to fill them with gas. So they would have extra gas on hand.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's so dangerous.
Plastic bags? Oh gosh.
Yeah. And it was like people were taking pictures of people. No, you have to put them in a gas can.
The jerry cans, like the red ones.
Yeah,
right?
the jerry cans. Yeah. That's right. Which are the hard plastic with the pouring spout. I mean, gasoline can save your life in your car, but it's also extremely flammable and will melt through petroleum products. So you don't want to be carrying that around in a Ziploc bag. Who to call in an emergency? Now that's an interesting one. Adriana, who do you call now, other than your dad? We know you would call him, but in the event that you had a breakdown somewhere, what would you do?
So in terms of who I would call, because it would depend on the type of the emergency. If it's nothing that would require 911, I would probably have to look it up for my particular area because I don't have that handy. The only numbers I have committed to memory are like 911 and 311. Like I wouldn't know who to call for my particular area for an emergency other than like one that would require 911 assistance. And I've actually gotten in trouble before for calling 911 when I should have called another number. I remember that the 911 operators were like, "This is not the number you call." I was like, "Okay," and I had to figure it
Well,
out.
people do call for ridiculous things. Can you give me the correct time? I mean, every so often they'll post a list of the stupid things people call for, and it really does tie up operators. But it is a bit of an issue because if you do have some kind of a roadside issue and nobody knows the local number, and even if you did, where we live, it could be different in Oakville, right? Versus Mississauga versus Toronto. They all have their own different local numbers. And then there's the OPP as well. So sometimes 911 can be the easiest number to call to be routed to the more local police service, which they can do. Jessica, who would you call in an emergency?
I'm fortunate enough to have CAA. So if it was a roadside assistance issue, I would be calling them right away. And I have called them quite a few times. So good thing for that membership.
I will say, I mean, CAA is one of our sponsors, but every time I ever called them or they've always, their drivers have been great. Really great.
Same with me, especially. So, I was going to school in St. Catharines and I had actually left my car there. And when I came home with my roommate and she had driven because it didn't really make sense for both of us to drive home. But as she's driving us back, I was moving the car because we have a very tight drive where we kind of have to shuffle the cars. And I went to go turn on my car and it was that same noise that Adriana had heard. And I was like, oh my gosh, are you kidding? My battery. And I obviously started to panic a little bit. But I was like, I have CAA, it's going to be okay. And as the driver who came was very, very helpful. Everything that he, even just talking me through it, just like, okay, next, like, no, do you know maybe how you left your car before the weekend? It was also winter, so that could have been a factor. But yeah, even just not only in terms of making sure that everything's done correctly, but walking me through it so that I know what they're doing. And if there's ever a situation where this happens again, what to do next time.
Yeah, good point. Desiree, who would you call?
Oh, that's a very good question. I don't drive, so my dad, like I'm the passenger, but I think after I panic, the first thing I would call would, like, if I'm not with my dad, it would probably be my dad. And then after my dad, it would probably be CA because I know my family also has like a membership with them.
Anybody who has an owner's manual, there are different slots in it, and it's a good idea to have like the registration in one, and your CAA card is a good thing to keep in there too. So who to call?
Well, we all have your number, so I think they would just call you.
I would first think, right? What would Anne Marie do? And then I'll go, you know what? I can call her. I'm going to go do that.
You would know what to do.
Well, and you could take a look at our video library if you can't reach me.
Yeah.
But it's about keeping a clear head. But I wanted to get back to what Adriana said too about pulling over. And I have seen people pull over on highways to change a tire. And it's the outside tire, and they have their legs in a live lane of traffic while they're changing a tire. I saw somebody do that on a ramp too onto the highway. And you can drive your car 20 kilometers easily on a flat tire. Get off the highway, get off the ramp, and pull into some place that's, I know.
Oh
and I see it not that, I'll see a couple of people doing that a year. And I think, geez, people aren't paying attention. People are going at high speed. They may not be able to move over as quickly as they would like to. Just really foolish, which just makes me think of, in Ontario, we have a slow down, leave a lane law. And that is that if a tow truck is at the side of the road or an emergency vehicle like a police vehicle, you are required to slow down. And if you can, move a lane over so there's a spare lane between the stranded vehicle or the police vehicle and you. And that's a really important law for people to know about, because there have been cases where people have pulled over in even this sort of situation that I'm talking about, and they get hit. And it's so preventable. So, I mean, from both parties, but if you can, get right off the highway. You're better off to damage your vehicle and even the wheel than get hit and killed at a roadside. And also, when you pull over, you don't want to pull over, you want to pull over on a flat spot, not uphill or downhill. You don't want to be just around a curve where people are going to come around the curve and, oh my God, there you are. And you want to make sure that it's firm ground. People who pull over in sandy areas and then try to jack up the car and you're going nowhere, So you've got to be very aware when you pull over and make sure that you're completely off the road and that you personally do not have to go onto the road to do anything. And then there's also some concern about whether you should stay in the car or not. And that's a tough call.
I was going to say that happened to my friend once while she was in an Uber. They went on the highway and he pulled over to change his tire because something blew out. And I remember she was calling me. She's like, I don't know what to do. I'm staying in the car. Like, I think this is safe. Like, she was already late for her midterm or whatever at that point. But it just reminded me of that because she was like, this is crazy. We're like pulled over on the highway and he's changing a tire.
I actually, I have a person who's involved in road safety and very, very knowledgeable. And we got into a bit of an argument about whether or not you should stay in the car. And his thing was everybody must get out of the car. I believe in a lot of cases, you're better off in the car, but never if you're in a live lane of traffic. Like the car has to be completely off the road. And then you're better off belted in the car. Depending on where you are. I mean, if you're on a bridge or in any kind of overhang, you can't really get out of the car. If there's a field that you can safely get out of the car into the field, then maybe that's a better place to be than in the car, waiting in the car. So I think you have to use some sense. Never step into that live lane of traffic to get out of the vehicle. You've got to get out on the passenger side of the vehicle so that you don't put yourself in jeopardy. And I see people do that all the time and then leave the door open, right? They get out and leave the door open. And it's like, oh, you can just see what the possibility is there. But I really don't think there's a clear rule whether you should stay in the car or not. And at night, there is an effect called the moth effect, where if the vehicle lights are on and a vehicle is coming, they think that you're in a lane of traffic, and a lot of vehicles get hit at roadside at night. So you want to, if at night especially, you want to get out of the vehicle if you can. But you have to be careful. I mean, I heard about somebody getting off and they were stopped on a bridge or an overhang, didn't realize it. And the guy got out and stepped over the barrier, didn't realize that there was kind of nothing below the barrier. So, I mean, I read too many of these stories, clearly. But I think the point is that you really need to use some judgment, where am I safer? And if you decide to stay in the vehicle, you must keep your seatbelt on. Brake failure. What do you do if your brakes fail? I'm sad to say that happened to me once too.
Oh my goodness.
I've been driving a long time. So what happened to me, I was up.
AM, you're full of stories. It's like you have a story for everything.
Oh my God. Well, yeah. I mean, some of them were kind of embarrassing but I just didn't know. I was young. I had a Volkswagen Beetle, which I loved the car. It was a wonderful, wonderful car. And it was stick shift. And I was headed up north and had a friend in the car. And we're going on, and all of a sudden I go to slow down and I have nothing. I'm pumping the brake pedal and there is nothing. And fortunately it was standard. So I was able to gear down and then use the parking brake to stop. I am truly very, very lucky. I was right in front of one of those roadside, what do they call them? Those centers. I'm thinking Encore, but that's not what they're called. Where you can get coffee and gas and
Like an en route?
yeah,
En
en
route,
route.
yeah.
You may not
Encore.
have the genes to know about the car, but you have the genes that seem to have the best luck when your car breaks down.
I
Yeah.
truly do. I am so lucky. But that's exactly, and I was right in front of that, and we were able to get the car in there, and then we got it towed to a gas station and where it could be repaired. But I was lucky, but you can gear down in an automatic vehicle too. And that really helps. And then you can use your parking brake, but you can't really pull the parking brake up fast because then you will strip your parking brake. I mean, that's really it. It's for an emergency situation. You want to slow down as much as you can. And of course, the other thing is I was headed up the 400. So there was quite a bit of traffic and I was able to get over to the side of the road. Which brings me to another point. In the event of something like that happens and you must move around an obstacle, which in this case was all the other traffic, you have to be looking where you want to go, not at the obstacle. And that's always the case. Even if you start to skid, you want to look where you want to go, not at the thing you want to avoid. Because what happens is your hands will take you where your eyes are looking. So if you're looking at the obstacle, you're going right into it. If you're looking at the path to safety, that's where the car will go to. So just another little tip. I've had my share of kind of vehicle issues, but I'm glad that you guys can learn from them. Gas pedal sticks. What do you want to do if you're driving along and all of a sudden the gas sticks and you cannot stop the car?
That's a really good question.
I'm like trying to remember the MTO handbook, like what I read like 5 years ago. I'm like, what did it say? What were the rules? Well,
I read about a woman who talked about this too. And she was saying that all of a sudden the car just wouldn't stop. Right now, first thing you can do is put your foot underneath the gas pedal, see if you can pull it up, because sometimes there's just some reason it's sticking, and try to get the gas pedal to come back up. If that doesn't work, you can try gearing down. And then somebody finally said to her, turn off the ignition. And she did. And then the car came to a stop. And I have to tell you, that would not have occurred to me to turn off the ignition.
No, you said that. I think my heart seemed to be, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I could. I don't know if in the moment that would feel like a good decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought of that, but that eventually stopped the car.
Wow. Good to know.
Well, you want to try the other things first. I mean, unsticking the pedal if you can, but without reaching down and grabbing it, right? You want to do it with your foot. And you want to try braking if that will help, and gearing down. But if all else fails, that's what this woman did. And people are saying, well, of course, that's right. Well, wouldn't have occurred to me, but
it wouldn't have occurred to me either.
Have any of you ever hit an animal or almost hit an animal?
It's happened on road trips, and I'm always sleeping when it happens. And my dad like has to steer us back onto the road. And it could be for like a small squirrel sometimes. But my mom's like, it's a squirrel. Why are we swerving for a squirrel that's dead already? And he's like, I don't want a collision. But like the amount of times it's happened whenever we've driven back or driven to like cottage trips is quite surprising. I think once we were driving down to the States because we were going for a cruise, and like the docking, like the place that we had to leave from was Florida. And there was the deer, and it was raining really heavily that too. So we couldn't see a thing. And I think all of us were already tense. And in tense situations, for some reason, I'm like, I'm going to go to sleep. Because
I don't want to see.
You'll wake up and the tense situation will be gone.
Yeah.
It's just a nightmare. I'm not tension. I'm going to go to sleep. So I took a nice stress nap, and I woke up all of a sudden because my dad, it was raining heavily, and my dad swerved out and he swerved back onto the lane. And it turns out there was a deer that was like dead on the road. And My mom called like all our uncles and aunts who were coming on the cruise with us as well. We're like, "Are you okay? Did you swerve?" And one uncle was like, "I just drove over the animal." And we're like, you drove over it?" And then my mom started like scolding my dad again. She's like, "Why didn't you drive over it?" But I think in that sense, like, Am, what would you do in that sense? Like, if there was an animal on the road, how would?
Fortunately, this has not happened to me, and I am an absolute animal lover. I love dogs. I love cats. So it would be very hard. But a dead animal on the road, I would go over it. Swerving is very dangerous. You can easily lose control. You can flip the car and roll it. It's hard to recover after a swerve. Stuff in the car shifts, and that can be, I mean, swerving is really bad. So if that's the case, I mean, you're better to go over it. Now, it's another thing that you have to think of beforehand. What would I do? Because in that moment, I think most people would swerve around it because there's something telling you you don't want to go over it. But it's the right thing to do in that case. I've read that you're better off hitting small animals if you can't avoid them. But in most cases, you can slow down a little bit. So, and maybe toot your horn and the animal will get out of the way. It's really a very hard thing. Nobody wants to hit an animal. But you don't want to lose control of your vehicle and maybe hit somebody or, end up with people hurt in the vehicle either. So it is a tough call, but the recommendation that I've read is that for smaller animals, you're better off if you can't avoid them and you can't, toot the horn to get them out of the way, you're better off hitting them. But hard to do,
For
Yeah.
bigger animals, it would be better to swerve then, I assume, because like the impact, like a deer, I feel like a deer is the most common one you run into. If you like run into them, like I wouldn't know whether it's better to hit or swerve because of the size of it.
Bigger animals,
Right?
you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
They're different, right? They say, unfortunately, again, I have not come into this kind of a position, but I mean, at night, slow down. Don't overdrive your headlights. Stay alert and watch for those glinting eyes. Like at night, if there is an animal at the side of the road, you see that bright light of the reflection in their eyes. Slow down. And if you can, beep your horn to make sure that they don't cross your path. Again, what I've read and haven't experienced is that if an animal crosses your path and you can see them up ahead, try to go behind them rather than in front of them, because usually there are other animals coming too. But if you can, slow down and avoid them completely. It's a tough situation. And from what I've learned from the Ministry of Transportation is that in the spring and in the fall, which are mating seasons for large animals, those are when you really have to be very careful. Often there are those signs up to tell you that there's that kind of wildlife in the area. And so you just slow down a little bit and stay extra alert.
Yeah.
Yeah, hitting any kind of creature is really hard, right? You also, if you go behind it, you don't want to go into the oncoming traffic, right? You have to be very careful. That's why when you're driving, you always need to be checking your mirrors and checking all around you so you know where the other vehicles are. So when you have to make those really fast decisions, you know where your out is, you know where there's a clear space that you can enter without colliding into another vehicle.
So there was a thunderstorm warning, I think, a couple months back in Ontario, and it was passing through Peterborough, and my family was. I think that was the weekend we decided to go up to paint my sister's apartment. So we went up to Peterborough, and we're painting the apartment, and my uncle calls. He's like, "There's a thunderstorm warning, and it's supposed to be really bad." So my dad was like, "Okay, let's start heading out. We'll miss it. If anything, we won't get caught in the storm." um Wise words, but I felt like that was like jinxing it a bit because we did get caught in the storm, and it was really bad because we initially we were driving and everybody was driving very slowly on the highway, And then after a while, everybody started pulling out, like pulling over and like waiting it out because it got really bad and you couldn't see a thing. I think that was very scary. We waited for like a good 15-20 minutes for that to like pass. But yeah.
That is very scary. And it's in rain. It's okay to drive. You've got your windshield wipers, front and back, you can still see. But every so often you get one of those incredible downpours where it's so heavy you can't see. And then it really is dangerous to continue. Pulling over at the side of the road is risky because of that moth effect that I mentioned. The lights at the side of the road, some people will continue to drive at speed, and it just always amazes me. And somebody could go into you thinking you're part of the line of traffic ahead. So that's dangerous, but also stopping under a bridge. And this is something that our colleague Megan looked into for us. And I've heard that you should not do that, but I didn't really understand why. And it is with really high winds, there is an effect where the winds build under the bridge, and it can be very dangerous. So the recommendation is not to stop under a bridge, which is counterintuitive to what I would have thought. I would have thought you had a little better protection under the bridge.
Bridge is probably where I'd want to be.
Yeah, it sets up kind of a wind tunnel, and which makes it more dangerous. So you shouldn't be parking under the bridge. But of course, the best advice in that is, delay leaving or pull off the road when it starts to get really bad, and right off the road, not to the side of the road, into a safe place, because you're always at risk when you stop at the side of the road. You really don't want to do that if you don't have to.
I do have a question for you. There was a scenario, now that we're talking about driving in the rain. I was driving through, I believe it was Acton. And if you know Acton, it's quite just country life out there. And it was raining very, very hard. We were already on the road, but the only choice was to continue driving or to pull off to the side of the road. I had continued driving. I had pulled into the right lane, drove slowly, because I felt that if I pulled off to the side of the road, heaven forbid someone were to hit me, I'm going right into the ditch. I don't know, is that the right thing to do? Should I have just pulled over to the shoulder? What would you suggest in that scenario where maybe you're not close to somewhere where you can really pull off?
Did you still have visibility, or was the rain so hard that you couldn't see ahead?
It was kind of off and on. For the most part, it was really hard to see.
See, there are two issues there. Three really. One is, can you see? Can other vehicles see you? And how stressed are you driving, right? To me, that would be so stressful that I would rather get right off the road and go sit and have a cup of tea somewhere and then when it's better, get back on the road, because it is very stressful driving in that kind of weather too. And for what, 20 minutes, is it really worth it? Like, storms never last forever. So if, even a 3-hour delay, is it worth it? Stop and have dinner, whatever. And then you're better relaxed. You get back on the road, you can see where you're going. And it's just, it's not that important either. It's not that important to me to get there on time in a situation like that, because everything else is delayed. It's, you do the best you can. And you also look after your own safety and the safety of people in the vehicle. So I think it's always a judgment call. But if your visibility is impaired, if you think people can't see you, or you're feeling so stressed that you just, could make a mistake, or pull off the road, and right off the road, not onto the shoulder. Get right off and in a parking lot somewhere where you can just sit and relax for a little bit. Okay, on that note, dealing with emergencies, thank you all very much. And you can call me anytime if you need some help. All right, we'll see you again. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.